We begin with a major geopolitical development that is sending shockwaves across Africa and Europe. Burkina Faso has officially ended diplomatic relations with France, bringing one of the most historic and controversial partnerships in West Africa to an abrupt halt. The decision marks a dramatic turning point in the relationship between the two countries, whose political, military, and economic ties stretch back more than 6 decades to Burkina Faso's independence from French colonial rule in 1960. For many observers, this is far more than a diplomatic disagreement. It represents a defining moment in the growing movement across parts of Africa to reduce dependence on former colonial powers and assert greater national sovereignty over domestic affairs, security, and economic policy. Since Captain Ibrahim Traoré assumed leadership in September 2022, Burkina Faso has steadily reshaped its foreign policy. His administration has repeatedly argued that the country's future must be determined by Burkinabe citizens rather than external powers. That vision has translated into a series of bold actions that have steadily transformed the country's relationship with France. French military forces were ordered to leave Burkina Faso. Military cooperation agreements were suspended. French media organizations faced increasing restrictions, and government officials frequently accused Paris of maintaining an outdated model of influence that no longer reflected the aspirations of the Burkinabe people. Now, with diplomatic relations officially severed, those tensions have reached their highest level yet. Diplomatic relations are the formal channels through which governments communicate, negotiate agreements, provide consular services to their citizens, and cooperate on matters ranging from trade and education to intelligence sharing and regional security. Ending those relations is one of the strongest political messages one sovereign nation can send to another without entering into armed conflict.
Cet état de fait se traduit entre autres par un activisme incessant du régime en place en France contre les intérêts du Burkina Faso, des ambitions néocoloniales affichées avec le soutien actif à des réseaux subversifs et aux terroristes qui endeuillent notre pays et le Sahel, la perfidie et la partialité des discours.
The implications could be far-reaching. French diplomats may be required to leave Burkina Faso, while Burkinabe diplomatic staff in France could also be recalled. Embassies and consulates may suspend operations, making it significantly more difficult for citizens of both countries to obtain visas, access emergency assistance, or conduct official government business. Economic cooperation could also face uncertainty. France has historically been one of Burkina Faso's important development partners, with links in infrastructure, education, healthcare, and investment. Although trade may continue through private businesses, government-backed cooperation and bilateral programs could face serious disruption if alternative arrangements are not established. The decision also carries enormous geopolitical significance. Burkina Faso is no longer acting in isolation. Alongside Mali and Niger, it has become a central member of the Alliance of Sahel States, commonly known as the AES. The three governments have increasingly coordinated their security policies, withdrawn from regional structures they viewed as ineffective, and strengthened partnerships with countries outside the traditional sphere of Western influence. Together, these nations have consistently argued that Africa must redefine its international relationships based on equality, mutual respect, and national interests rather than historical dependency. Supporters of Captain Ibrahim Traoré have welcomed the decision as another bold step toward restoring Burkina Faso's full independence. Across the country, many believe that decades of close cooperation with France failed to stop the worsening terrorist insurgency that has claimed thousands of lives and displaced millions of people. They argue that a new strategy, led by Burkinabe institutions and supported by new international partners, offers the country a better chance of securing lasting peace and stability. However, critics caution that breaking diplomatic ties with a major global power is not without risk. France remains a significant economic and political actor with influence across international institutions. Some analysts warn that prolonged diplomatic isolation could complicate foreign investment, development assistance, and broader international engagement at a time when Burkina Faso continues to face serious security and humanitarian challenges. What makes this development particularly significant is that it reflects a broader transformation taking place across the Sahel. In recent years, governments in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have increasingly rejected what they describe as external interference in their domestic affairs, choosing instead to pursue a foreign policy centered on sovereignty, military self-reliance, and diversified international partnerships. Whether this decision marks the beginning of a lasting realignment between Africa and its traditional Western partners, or the start of a new period of diplomatic uncertainty, remains one of the most closely watched questions on the continent today. As reactions continue to emerge from regional governments, international organizations, and global powers, the world will be watching closely to see how both Burkina Faso and France respond to this historic diplomatic rupture. One of the biggest questions now facing international observers is what this decision means for the future of the Sahel region. Burkina Faso remains at the center of an intense fight against armed extremist groups that continue to operate across large parts of the country and neighboring states. For years, France played a significant role in regional counter-terrorism efforts through military operations and intelligence cooperation. With diplomatic relations now severed, attention is turning to how Burkina Faso intends to strengthen its security strategy moving forward. Under Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the government has consistently maintained that Burkina Faso possesses both the determination and the right to defend itself without relying on foreign military forces whose presence, according to officials, failed to deliver lasting peace. Instead, the government has invested heavily in expanding its armed forces, recruiting thousands of volunteers for the defense of the homeland, and deepening military cooperation with its partners within the alliance of Sahel States. At the same time, Ouagadougou has sought to build new strategic partnerships beyond its traditional allies. Cooperation with countries such as Russia has increased in recent years, while relations with China, Turkey, and several other nations have also expanded. Government officials insist that these partnerships are based on mutual respect and shared interests rather than political conditions. The diplomatic split is also expected to generate strong reactions across the African continent. Some governments may view Burkina Faso's decision as a courageous assertion of national independence, arguing that every sovereign nation has the right to determine its own foreign policy without external pressure. Others may express concern that growing divisions between African states and Western partners could make regional cooperation more difficult at a time when the continent continues to face security, economic, and humanitarian challenges. Meanwhile, in France, political leaders are likely to assess both the immediate and long-term consequences of the rupture. France has historically regarded the Sahel as a region of strategic importance, not only because of security concerns but also because of long-standing historical, economic, and cultural ties. Losing formal diplomatic relations with Burkina Faso would represent another significant setback for French influence in West Africa, following similar tensions with Mali and Niger in recent years. Beyond governments, ordinary citizens in both countries could also feel the effects. Thousands of Burkinabe nationals living in France and French citizens residing or working in Burkina Faso may face uncertainty regarding visas, residency permits, educational exchanges, business operations, and access to consular assistance. Universities, humanitarian organizations, and international development projects that depend on cooperation between both governments may also need to reassess their operations. International organizations, including the United Nations and the African Union, are expected to monitor developments closely. Diplomatic disputes of this magnitude often attract global attention because they have the potential to reshape regional alliances, influence economic partnerships, and alter the balance of geopolitical influence in an increasingly competitive international environment. For Captain Ibrahim Traoré, supporters argue that this latest move reflects a consistent political philosophy that has defined his leadership since taking office. They believe his administration is pursuing a vision of complete national sovereignty, one in which Burkina Faso controls. Their story continues to unfold.
Se traduit entre autres par un activisme incessant du régime en place en France contre les intérêts du Burkina Faso, des ambitions néocoloniales affichées avec le soutien actif à des réseaux subversifs et aux terroristes qui endeuillent notre pays et le Sahel, la perfidie et la partialité des discours et des opinions sur notre pays pour en faire un paria de la communauté internationale. Face à ces visées impérialistes de domination de notre pays et d'asservissement du peuple, nous avons fait le choix de la responsabilité et de la souveraineté. Le gouvernement tient à souligner que cette décision ne remet nullement en cause les liens historiques, humains, culturels et sociaux qui unissent les peuples burkinabés et français. Elle vise exclusivement le cadre institutionnel des relations entre les deux États au plan diplomatique. Le gouvernement rassure l'opinion nationale et internationale de sa volonté et de son engagement à assurer la protection des ressortissants auxquels il réaffirme son hospitalité ainsi que la préservation de leur. Il invite l'ensemble des citoyens à faire preuve de responsabilité, de retenue et de civisme vis-à-vis des ressortissants français et de l'ensemble des expatriés vivant sur le sol burkinabé dans le strict respect des règles. Le gouvernement réaffirme sa détermination à poursuivre une politique étrangère indépendante fondée sur la diversification de ses partenariats, le renforcement de la coopération sud-sud, le développement de relations équilibrées avec tous les États et la promotion de la paix, de la sécurité et du développement durable. Le gouvernement du Burkina Faso demeure ouvert au dialogue avec l'ensemble des États de la communauté internationale sur la base du respect mutuel, de la réciprocité, de l'égalité souveraine et de la défense des intérêts légitimes de chacun. Il demeure engagé à bâtir avec toutes les nations éprises de paix et de justice un monde libre, plus juste et plus solidaire. Fait à Ouagadougou ce jour 26 juin 2026.